This is the future.
Now, instead of nitpicking every warframe in the game, and making a tier list of the best warframe to use in Duviri Paradox, I decided to make a video wherein I show all warframes with builds intended for Duviri Paradox use. I'll be honest here, I haven't played every warframe in the game on Duviri Paradox, but after more than a week of grinding, I think I have enough knowledge which solves all the problems that most players have on both Duviri Experience and the circuit that I may share some of the builds I prefer to use in Duviri Paradox for each warframe. If you have a build of your own that you might want to share, then feel free to share it in the comment section below. By the way, I will be announcing the giveaway winner this weekend for the Fabled Warrior pack, so please check out the video I have announced the giveaway to know who is the winner. The link to that video is in the description below. Lastly, I won't be showing any demonstration here as I have said earlier, I have not used all of the warframes in Duviri and it will be much better if we focus on the builds and tell you why I choose every mod for this warframe. So, let's finish this introduction and begin with the first warframe, Ash. Take note that Gloom is not needed here and Vanilla Ash or Ash Prime without any Helminth is all you need. For my Ash, it's all about support and DPS in Duviri. Smoke Shadow is the best in here as it doesn't just provide critical chance for the whole team, but it also keeps them safe by becoming invisible for 20+ seconds. I opted for range so I can spread the invisibility better, especially in public queues. In terms of gameplay, I usually help the team killing enemies. If I have good guns, I often pick those guns specific degrees first, while if all my weapons are crap, then I go for all the melee decrees. Remember that melee in Duviri is kind of busted because of those decrees, even with loner mods. The only problem with this build though is when I have an Encarnon with Letom as the critical chance boost from Smoke Shadow doesn't help. But honestly, I rarely get Encarnon weapons in the circuit or Duviri Experience, so might as well as go with the build that will benefit all players in the team. Next it Atlas. Now, I'll be honest with you here, Atlas is one of my worst picks for the Duviri missions as you can't do the same thing in Star Chart, wherein you rely most of the time on your stat stick to gain a huge damage boost for landslide. All I did was to buff him up with lots of armor for survivability and then I subsume Ensnare to somehow be helpful in my team. This is the worst part of the Duviri missions, as you can't use any stat stick or even companions which somehow make some warframes good, just like Atlas. If you can subsume any other good crowd control Helminth abilities, then the better. Or even go with a raw build with tons of survivability and power strength so you can help the team. Moving on, we got Banshee. Another warframe that was nerfed recently by Digital Extremes. Banshee's silence will no longer cause bosses and other CC immune enemies to perform a reaction animation, pausing to clutch their ears. Now, you might not see it yet as the hotfix that they Digital Extremes did not take effect, but they are currently making ways to make this happen. This means that all those enemies in the Undercroft that is Overguard will not be affected by silence anymore, reducing the ability of Banshee to help the team by crowd control. However, Banshee is still one of the best team player in Duviri Paradox as she has the sonar ability which makes every damage you deal broken. Now, instead of focusing on silence of CC, I decided to go with Resonator for that purpose. Also, you can go bananas with this build by adding more power strength if you please so that you can have more damage multiplier on her sonar ability. By the way, Arcane Guardian is not necessary. Moving on, we got Baruuk. Just like Atlas, Baruuk is kind of mess up right now when it comes to power as he is heavily reliant with stat stick to boost his airbending power. However, unlike Atlas, Baruuk can still help the team and be super tanky in the Duviri missions. Now, I only played Baruuk once in the Duviri circuit but I got a chance to deal with level 2k enemies thanks to my team by the way. Deadly Decrees from the Combat Drifter Intrinsic does allow his fourth ability to do some good airbending damage if you got a huge damage buff already. Not to mention that some of the decrees also work with Baruuk's airbending, so basically, at early stages, you just help the team with your crowd control coming from LoL, and do a melee build with all the melee decrees for Baruuk until you get to the point that you have enough damage boost from your decree and as well as your deadly decrees intrinsic. Now, I haven't used Caliban in the Duviri yet, and this is one of the warframes I admittedly dodge picking. but other players are enjoying the Warframe when it comes to Duviri. Lethal Progeny does deal more damage when you have lots of decrees, and the same with his other abilities, just like Razor Gyre, but honestly, I don't see him as my top pick when I got other options in hand. For safety, I just use the Breach Surge Subsume ability here to somehow provide CC and boost and damage. For Chroma, it's all about a no-brainer build and going full weapon specialist, since you don't have the option to mod your weapons or select them, and most low-no mods will have damage mods, which is not good for Chroma, since to min-max his Fury buff, you will need Elemental. I would say that the safer route for his build will just go with full power and survivability. Anyway, the Deadly Decrees will pair well with Chroma's damage, giving you insane DPS. But what about support Chroma for damage squad leader? Well, you can do that by removing narrow-minded and picking stretch mod instead, but it would not be as beneficial as Ash Smoke Shadow. Take note that once Ash casts Smoke Shadow, then allies can freely move wherever they want to go, while with Chroma, you need to stay in range to receive the buff. At normal range, you get 18 meters, and with stretch, you get 26 meters, which is not enough when your teammate wants to go beyond 30 meters from your area. I would prefer being the DPS in the team, and the one reviving them, than being a babysitter, just a personal preference though. Next, we have Citrine. This Warframe is one of those frames that you will enjoy playing with. The Warframe provides survivability to the whole team with the help of her Preserving Shell ability. She can also provide good damage to the team with her Prismatic Gem that procs multiple statuses, allowing you to gain more damage from your Condition Overload melee. But it's not all about melee though, as galvanized status mods also benefit from this. However, it may not be that easy, as you know, the whole choosing your weapon is totally random. But if you got a galvanized status gun, or a Condition Overload melee, then this will be awesome. And finally, her fourth ability allows you to deal red crit on some weapons, or yellow crits on those non-crit weapons, which are pretty great overall in a team that is seeking more damage. The best part is, one cast of Fractured Blast into a group of enemies and kill them will gain you more energy and health drops, which pairs well with Equilibrium. And did I mention that this also deals bleed? Citrine is really a great Warframe for Duviri Paradox in my opinion. For Ember, I highly suggest a Nourish Ember build. Aside from the infinite energy restore while immolation is active, with the help of Hunter Adrenaline mod, you also can proc viral to enemies, which boost the overall damage of your team. With this build, you can just spam your abilities, proc heat, proc viral, help the team with energy problems, and just make the team composition good overall. Now, for those asking why put Steel Charge on the Aura slot, well, I don't have enough mod capacity and I don't want to reform my Ember anymore, hence I decided to put Steel Charge so I can have all these mods for the build. For Equinox, this Warframe perfectly works with a team composition, especially if there's a Warframe that is constantly letting you to gain more energy. Building the main damage is nice for this Warframe, as it's really cool to see you reach those millions of damage fast with a team, nuke enemies, and stack damage again. I also added Creeping Terrify on this build, not just for armor strip, but also for crowd control purposes. I only played Equinox once in the circuit, but it was fun as hell. I would say that the nuking power is where the fun is, especially if you have damage boost from gaining more decrees. The damage becomes millions in just a matter of seconds stacking. This is one of the Warframe I love when it comes to clearing enemies fast with her main ability, and playing it with a team provides more comfort and easy nuking. Now, my experience with Excalibur is kind of weird. I have used him early, like 4 times in the first few days of Duviri, and it was kind of hilarious, as I am dealing little to no damage with my exalted weapons. In fact, most of the exalted users, Mesa, Titania, and Wukong, were not that good when built mainly for their exalted weapons. I haven't got the chance to play these Warframes after creating this video, so what I will do is give you 2 different options, a non-exalted build, and an exalted-oriented build. For Excalibur, the exalted build would be adding a chromatic blade augment, since we have no clue if we will get a primer gun in our weapon selection. Also, Xata's Whisper will help in boosting your damage really good. For his exalted blade, I prefer to go with lots of damage and the Condition Overload mod, since there are also lots of guaranteed status decrees in Duviri. Now, for the non-exalted build, I would say a Nuke Radial Javelin build is really awesome to play with, especially if you got lots of damage boost from your decree already. I was using Excalibur with Radial Javelin, and nuking enemies with millions of damage while playing Duviri experience with an exhausted degree. While it took hours of gameplay, it was fun and I did enjoy every moment of it. For Frost, all I can say is that this warframe is the best when it comes to defense. This is one of the frames you would want in a team if you want to go forever in the Steel Path circuit. He can defend Excavator and defense targets well with his Snow Globe ability. Take note that at higher levels, it's better to keep spamming the Snow Globe for that invulnerability instead of the health of the ability. Once you get the efficiency decrease for this frame, you can literally just spam his abilities. Also, a good thing about Frost is he also got some side layer of defense for himself. With brief respite for shield gating, and icy avalanche for ice armor, you can ensure that Frost will survive at higher Steel Path levels in the Undercroft. And also, the armor stripping of this ability helps. Clearly, one of the best pick in Duviri in my opinion. Gara is another warframe hit by the stat stick shenanigans in the Duviri missions. I don't have much to say about this warframe, but to build for survivability and help defend targets with her Mass Vitrify. Since we can't build up the stacks of her Splinter Storm early for damage, I can say that there is still hope if you will subsume Nourish in this build. Just replace her third with Nourish, and then use the same build. Nourish will allow you to do the combo wherein you need to cast Mass Vitrify and break it while Splinter Storm is active so that it can build damage. Do this a couple of times, and maintain the damage stack of Splinter Storm until you hit that certain point wherein the degrees that you collected will kick in with insane damage boost. For Fast Boy, well, this frame is mad and freaking awesome in the Steel Path circuit or anywhere in the Duviri missions. Just insane speed, especially with the fleet-footed that you can almost get all the redline bonus very at max rank very fast. But wait, we are not just talking about speed here. Gauss is actually one of the most insane nuking warframes in the Undercroft. Just literally melts enemies when you combine elements with Thermal Sunder. At max redline you can completely speed nuke everything, even at high level, with the efficiency decrease of course, or warframes supporting you with energy refill. But honestly, with just Arcane Energize and picking up energy, you can nuke and have some fun with this warframe. All you need to do is run around, do some Macrush until your redline is full, then start pressing Thermal Sunder to freeze enemies, then heat to do damage. Rinse and repeat the process and see those big numbers come up, especially when you are with high damage bonus from your Deadly Decree. Such an insane frame to use in the Duviri Paradox, and if you have this warframe in your select screen, then don't hesitate to try him out and use this build. Moving on, we got Munchboy Grendel. A great support warframe because of his Nourish ability that grants increase energy regen in all energy regen sources, and grants viral procs to enemies which increases the overall damage of all your warframes and weapons. Not to mention that with Grendel, you can also strip armor with his abilities. Rolling around like a bowling ball and hitting enemies will strip their armor. The same with spitting with Regurgitate, and it does also toxin damage. My advice is, to build this warframe for range, survivability, and decent power strength for 100% armor strip. Now, I have played Gyre once in the circuit. I was kind of hesitant, but it does turn out well because we had Ash with Smoke Shadow in the team. The only comment I can do with Gyre is she works great in nuking when a teammate is supporting her survivability and energy regen. In solo mode though, it's not the best pick for me as her survivability is really what keeps me out from picking this warframe. For Harrow, it's all about supporting your team with invulnerability for a couple of seconds, enough to get out in sticky situations. Energy regen from his Throuble, healing from his Penance ability, some crowd control with his Condemn ability, and also critical chance for damage boost. He is versatile in terms of supporting a team, and is the best when your teammates already pick some warframes that are not a support. Long story short, Harrow basically makes a team good if you know when and where to cast your abilities. For Hildryn, I'm still using the Gloom Bomber build for her, and it still works wonder in the Duviri missions. The ability of Pillage to regain shield and strip defenses is really helpful and makes Hildryn an awesome DPS with his guns or melee. Not to mention that Blazing Pillage heat damage does scale with the damage buff you gain from Deadly Momentum Decree, and the Deadly Decree itself you unlock from the Drifter Intrinsics. Overall, Hildryn is a generally good warframe to pick in the Duviri missions. Next, we got Hydroid. Well, you can pick the other 4 warframes and there's no selection wherein there will be 3 or 5 Hydroids, so pick the other warframes. Now, I know I have been shitting on this frame for quite some time now, and no matter how players will say that Hydroid is good on this or that, I still think that his abilities are obsolete right now. The Duviri missions made it even clearer. I did pick up Hydroid for the memes, tried his tentacles, and even tried the corrosive rain before even subsuming Condemn in the first ability. It was good, and the damage is quite good as I got all my decrees exhausted, but honestly, the damage part can be done so much better by other warframes. The Duviri update made it clear to me that Hydroid really needs a rework. Moving on, we got Inaros. For this warframe, it's all about surviving and helping the team kill enemies. I also pick Inaros once, and all I did was to ensnare enemies in place so I can kill them. Build for melee as I was using a heat sword which actually works and does good damage with low mods when you have the melee decrees. I hate to say this, but this warframe also needs a rework as he got nothing to offer than to be productive in team composition. The only goal of Inaros is to boost his life so he won't die and he can kill enemies in a team. That may sound useful, but imagine his usefulness when a nuking Gauss is in the team. For Ivara, I always pray that I have a good gun selection for this warframe. Melee is demanding for the warframe as each strike will cost energy, and that is not good when keeping your invisibility with Prowl. But what if you got a good gun, say, a nuking gun like the Tenet Envoy, or the Kuva Brahma? Well, I got one word for you, Wire. Play as Spider-Man in the Duviri missions as Ivara and nuke enemies down below. She can be a good DPS, especially with Eclipse, and also, Wire allows you to travel from one spot to another. Just place Wire everywhere and have fun with it. The next warframe is Khora. This is also one of the warframes that got hit with the static shenanigans. You can't play with Khora right now, but she is still a great warframe to have in terms of defense. Use her pilfering Strangledome to crowd control and give useful loot like health and energy orbs, and you can also use her ensnare to further lock target in groups for easy killing. My build kind of sucks at the moment, as I did not have any additional former on this yet. Augur Reach should be replaced with Stretch for more range, and I would go for Steel Charge and further increase the range of it by adding Cunning Drift in the Exilus mod slot. By the way, use Protea's dispensary so you can spam your abilities and protect the defense target easily. Next, we got Lavos. Honestly, I haven't tried this warframe yet, but there are possibilities this can be a good nuker warframe. However, it would take time to build that one up since it would need some guaranteed procs decrees and damage boost to see the full nuking benefit of Catalyze. If only we could get Seed Dough all the time, then it would be much better to proc more status easily. This warframe can be combo-ed though with the likes of Vorunner and Citrine, but it would take some setup and communication. Moving on, we got Limbo. I did not expect that the time would come when I can highly recommend Limbo in a new update. This warframe is great in terms of defending objectives in the Duviri missions. No nullifiers mean you don't waste recasting your abilities just to defend a target. Sure, there are Eximus units that can still shoot you in the rift, but I can't understand why players are complaining about this as it's part of the challenge. Limbo now is not something that you cast your ability and let it expire. His defense is more towards giving the team time to react and kill those targets that are actual threats to the defense target. This will allow you to focus on those special units and negate all the damage that trash mobs do to your defense objective. On the other side of things, I also added the Surging Blades into Limbo so I can help out the team damage enemies while in the rift. But then again, don't ever think you are safe, as special units like Eximus can still shoot you in the rift, which doesn't make any sense at all. That is why I have included shield gating with brief respite, which pairs well with Surging Blades as every cast will restore my shield. For Loki, it's all about staying hidden all the time, killing enemies and reviving your teammates. It's good to have Eclipse in your ability so you can deal more damage with the help of the decrees, especially if you don't have a good weapon and opt in for a melee build. For mag, I use my usual build for this warframe in Duviri Paradox. The combination of crowd control, shield gating, and defense strip helps the team in completing each objective easy. Not to mention that Mag can stand on her own in survival and exterminate with the help of her abilities. Magnetize can also be a great tool to defend, and all you need to do is magnetize a target that is near the defense objective. You will negate all shots fire, and all you need to do is take care of those melee enemies. For Mesa, I got 2 build recommendations for her. The first one is the Peacemaker focused build. If Digital Extremes fixed the thing that doesn't allow you to mod Exalted and Duviri, it's the basic strength and duration build intended for Peacemaker to dish out insane DPS, especially with the help of the decree system. Now, if the bug still exists, then I advise you to go with this build, maximizing power and survivability. What I did here is to subsume Eclipse so I can gain more damage to the gun and melee I am using. Then, I added some crowd control with the help of Muzzle Flash and Mesa's shooting gallery ability. Next, we have Mirage. For this warframe, aside from survivability and damage, I build Mirage to share that damage part on Eclipse with the help of Total Eclipse. The only downside of this is I have to be close to allies so that they can maintain the damage buff. For my Nekros, I decided to go full support on this, providing my team with energy and health loot with Desecrate, and crowd controlling, as well as stripping armor with Creeping Terrify. I can go with a Shield of Shadow build for more survivability, but that would only benefit me and not the team. So instead of focusing on damage reduction, I instead go with shield gating with brief respite and the health regen from those health orbs, coupled with health conversion armor buff. Moving on, we got Nezha. This is also a warframe I highly recommend, not just because of his insane survivability, but he also got some awesome crowd control in the form of Firewalker and Divine Spears. I did opt out Divine Spears and subsume Ensnare because it pairs well with my Pyroclastic Flow build, but honestly, even with the vanilla version, Nezha is one of those warframe picks that I can recommend, as it can literally do everything in the Duviri missions: survive, damage boost and crowd control. For Nidus, I use my usual Ensnare, Teeming Virulence build. One time I used Nidus in the team, I felt really useless as I can't stack mutations faster. My team is speed killing enemies before I even can stack mutations for my abilities, so it's annoying sometimes. The mutation stack condition is annoying. You know I love Nidus, but for the Duviri mission, I can't recommend this warframe when there's other better options. Next, we got Nova. For this warframe, I decided to go with a slow Nova build since the map size isn't that big for Duviri Undercroft. You can crowd control enemies with slow Nova and just kill them all before they can even reach the objective. However, just remember that there are lots of overguard units in the mission, so be careful. That is why I added a brief respite for shield gating on my Nova. Molecular Fission is also a best in slot, as you have a team that can kill those affected units fast, restoring your null star particles. If there's one thing I would like to add is that cast the Molecular Prime 3 seconds before the next wave start in the defense mission, so it will expand faster since I don't have any range mod on this. On other missions, cast it whenever it is possible. For Nyx, well, I haven't used this warframe in Duviri Paradox honestly. I had the option to pick this once, but I don't see it as a warframe better than the warframes that I have mentioned before. It's really hard to make this warframe an asset in a team, since if you pick to be an assimilate Nyx, then you will be slow in terms of movement, and fast movement sometimes means more DPS done. Most missions in the Duviri Paradox are to kill enemies as fast as possible. However, I don't see this warframe as totally useless, as she also got her Chaos ability for crowd control. For Oberon, this warframe is versatile as ever, providing teammates with heal, crowd control, and armor stripping. Now, I did not go with range in here, since I can just spam and place hallowed ground wherever I want with this build. Moving on, we got Octavia, which offers crowd control, damage buff, and somehow survivability to the team if they don't mind teabagging all the time to maintain invisibility. The best part of Octavia is her resonator that keeps enemies away from the defense objective. While Mallet is a great tool for infinite damage scaling, but this doesn't excel well, as most players would prefer killing enemies as fast as possible and not waiting for Mallet damage to scale. It does help in damage when it's properly placed in a location wherein enemies are at, but the main thing about Octavia is keeping Resonator active at all times. Amp is also a good ability as it boosts the weapon damage of your team. For Protea, it's all about keeping her alive with the shield regen from shield satellites, dealing insane damage with her blazing artillery, and providing energy and health with her dispensary. I also added some range for crowd control, as I have Ensnare on this build. Next, we have Revenant. Well, I got 2 words for your Mesmer shield. The new augment works wonders in the new Duviri missions, especially helping out the team survive. With Enthrall also, it helps provide some aggro control so that the mesmer charges on your team won't get consumed easily. In playing Revenant, all you need to do is cast Mesmer Skin, cast Enthrall, kill enemies, and just rinse and repeat. While it's not fun as nuking, it surely makes the mission a lot easier, and I highly recommend Revenant in the Duviri missions. For my Rhino, basically I had to improvise and put the mods that I can on this since I modded this specifically for that million armor stack. But since we can't do that in the Duviri missions, I decided to be a jack of all trades, providing damage buff, and also crowd controlling targets when needed. If there's one mod that I can replace, that is Piercing Roar in place of Primed Flow, so I can use my Stomp more. For my Sarin, it's the usual spreading the love virus with spores, and casting Miasma for more damage with the viral procs, and crowd control too. I also have Gloom in case I have max energy already, and wanted the full crowd control experience. However, it's not necessary at all since her second ability can be useful too in quick aggro control. Now, let's talk about Shevagoth. To be honest, his shadow is useless at the moment since its exalted claws don't deal damage at all. The first time I pick this warframe is that after getting the shadow meter at max, pull out my shadow, and hitting 200 damage, I immediately exited the Steel Path circuit as I know that I would suck on my team. This warframe doesn't have enough to offer since Gloom isn't that effective, especially with all the overguard in the bare minimum energy regen that you can get out from equipping Arcane Energize. It just doesn't help when you still get one-shotted by those enemies that can bypass Gloom. And then, there's the myth, the legend, and the most enjoyable warframe I ever played in Duviri, Styanax. With a Nourish build, you can press 4 to win with this warframe, especially if you got loads of degrees already that boost your deadly degree intrinsic. The other thing is, with Styanax on the team, you won't have energy problems when his third ability is active. Meanwhile, Titania is the other warframe that has been hit by the exalted shenanigans. You see, before Duviri Paradox, I was expecting Titania to be one of the best warframes in the Duviri missions, only to get disappointed as Digital Extremes messed up her exalted guns. The warframe literally has everything, movement, DPS, and crowd control to be good in the Duviri missions, but, since the bug is still present, I would advise you to step away from this warframe until Digital Extremes announce an official statement the exalted weapons are now working in Duviri missions. If that time arrives, then this is the build I will be using for the warframe and her exalted pistols. For Trinity, it's the same basic provide energy and provide damage reduction and shield gating mechanic. Pretty basic build, but it does help the team in so many ways. For more damage, I did add Eclipse on the build and slapped the total Eclipse augment so that my team would have more damage also. Make this a solid support build for Trinity in Duviri Paradox. Next, we have Valkyria. Now, I have said that I don't want to nitpick on warframes, but there are just some warframes that are not that good in the Duviri Paradox missions. For Valkyria, it's all about damage and survivability and nothing else, but the damage part would only come from the weapons and not from her Hysteria ability, as like other exalted users, Valkyria is also dealing little damage to enemies. Again, if the exalted weapons work in the Duviri missions, then this will be my build. But remember, you have to maintain your energy with Hysteria. Expect that you can't keep Hysteria active all the time, just like what we are doing in Star Chart missions. The next warframe is also a frame I haven't used in the Duviri Paradox, but after diving into the Duviri missions, I think it's better if you play Vauban not the Vortex way. The usual gameplay I do with Vauban is to place Vortex and Spectrosiphon on top of it. However, it would be much better to put Bastille first so that trash mobs will be crowd control and for easy picking. It's also good knowing for mechanics wherein you have degrees that have headshot mechanics, as Bastille will suspend enemies in the air for easy headshot. For more crowd control, I would replace Spectrosiphon with Octavia's Resonator for more control over the area. Next, we got Volt, yet another warframe that I haven't tried in the Duviri missions. But if I have the option to pick this warframe, then I would go with this build, not for nuking enemies, but for crowd control and keeping the whole team alive with the capacitance augment that gives out shield to you and your allies. Moving on, we have Vorana the Melee Master in Duviri Paradox. With all the melee decrees, Vorana is a beast in Duviri Paradox. In the Undercroft particularly, Vorana can solo level cap circuit if only the mission available is survival low, and not defending anything. The Warframe completely wrecks enemies with melee, and even with a trash melee with loner mods. After you got build up some melee decrees, plus the damage boost from Deadly Decree, you will see the massive DPS gains of this Warframe. The combo is, cast her third but make sure that you can kill the target, otherwise, you will wait for its cooldown. Then go invisible with her first, and pounce on enemies her second, then finish the target off with the melee weapon. Repeat the process again, but now, you don't need to cast her third if you have killed the target. Rinse and repeat, and if you are feeling good, then go get some one-shot kill with her fourth ability. Duviri Paradox missions are the playground of Vorona. However, remember that this Warframe is mainly for killing and DPS, not for defending anything in the missions. Next, we have Wisp. I use my usual prime parts farming build on Duviri, and still, Wisp can perform great in the missions. Honestly, Wisp is one of those Warframes that are very versatile right now, and provides a lot of benefits to the team. Healing, fire rate buff, damage buff through Breach Surge, and if you subsume Raw, and survivability through hovering in the air. Wisp is just so good in Warframe, and I can see now why people love her ass. I mean this Warframe. For Wukong, since Iron Staff might now be working yet, then I advise going with a Celestial Stomp with this mod setup. It's really fun seeing your Wukong stomp enemies and suspend them in the ground, not to mention that it does help the team in terms of crowd control. But if his staff will work in the future, then probably I will try a Primal Rage build for this Warframe. I only used Wukong once, and with the Celestial Stomp build, it was a fun experience, but I am pretty curious about how much damage I can get with his Exalted Staff, knowing all the buffs that I can get from these missions. The same goes with all the Exalted users, especially Mesa's Peacemaker. For the broken Warframe, it's all about stealing guns and killing enemies with them using Grasp of Lock, defense stripping with their Gaze ability, and keeping the Warframe alive with shield gating and his fourth ability's Dodge Chance. In my experience, this Warframe will not be the main DPS, but the second best option in dealing damage, not just with his guns, but also with his Grasp of Lock. The second ability does deal more damage once you acquire more degrees, which makes it fun to use. Next, we have Yarili. I think it was my third run in the Steel Path circuit when I tried this Warframe, and honestly, the kit of this Warframe is not that bad at all, especially that she has a Marulina Guardian augment right now that boosts her survivability. What this Warframe offers for the team is crowd control, grouping, and damage boosting, which makes the whole run a lot faster. During my run, I rarely use Aqua Blades since my team is dealing a lot of damage to enemies suspended in the air while they are affected by sea snares. This Warframe is a good choice and can support the team, and can do good damage as well if you have a good pistol, say the Letum. Why? Well, you can't melee all the time because you need to ride Marulina all the time to survive. And lastly, Zephyr. The main goal of this build for Duviri Paradox is fly and kill. Well, hover and kill, that is, as you will be using Tailwind most of the time to hover in the air while your Turbulence ability is active. This gives you insane survivability, and I match it with Eclipse so I can deal more damage with my Eclipse. The only thing I hate about Zephyr is that melee is not her strongest point, which is in Duviri, the most broken part of the game. Turbulence only deflects bullets and you are susceptible to melee damage, so it is wise that you don't pick this Warframe at all if you don't have a good gun selection. By the way, I almost forgot about Garuda. Okay, get that idea that Garuda sucks, that's why I skipped this Warframe out of here. I accidentally just skipped this Warframe because it was very late when I'm editing this video. There's no reason why I skip this Warframe, and in fact, Garuda is a good choice for Duviri missions since her fourth ability damage scales better if you have lots of damage boost from Deadly Decree. The Warframe can also maintain energy with the help of Bloodletting. That is why I choose to go with the Gloom build to help crowd control enemies. Just those trash mobs though, so they can focus on the special units. The small CC of the fourth ability also works, and with Bloodletting, you can actually spam the ability without no problem. So that's all about it. I hope that you have learned something from this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video to help out the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Squad Leader signing off.